It's time to talk NFL draft again on the Our Football Network and the Green Bay Packers. So when we talk Green Bay Packers football, that means we welcome in Bill Huber. He's the editor of Packer Central at Sports Illustrated. And Bill, good to have you on again.
How you doing, Greg?
Doing good. It's a busy
Awesome.
time of year. So you're all pumped up, ready to go for next week?
Am I ready? No, I'm not ready. we were talking off air. If the NFL could delay the draft by 1 week, that'd be extremely helpful because I have this whole series of things I want to get done, and I'm running out of time in a hurry, and kids' baseball starts tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't care about that. Yeah. Last year at this time, and for a great deal of the offseason and even into the season, it was all about Aaron Rodgers. So with that now, a storyline that we don't have to talk about. It's about restructuring this team just a little bit to get over the hump. First question I have for you, and I want to bring Aaron Rodgers into this too. Does Aaron Rodgers have any influence on what the Packers are going to do with the draft?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he needs to go to GM Brian Gutekunst and say, "Hey, we could use a receiver." I think it's probably apparent to everybody. So no, I don't think. I mean, Aaron's not sitting around in the scouting meetings, did he have some say on Sammy Watkins getting signed? To the extent that I'm sure Aaron would like to have another veteran receiver. I'm guessing Sammy's here, probably because of that, and Randall Cobb is back because of Rodgers. But as far as the draft, no, I don't think Aaron has any say on that whatsoever, other than the obvious that they need some targets for him.
Yeah,
but that's obvious to anybody. Anybody can tell him that.
Yeah, so with Adams gone, it's just a bigger hole, obviously. And Sammy Watkins was just brought in. You mentioned, of course, with Lazard back and Cobb back, but now you have a much bigger opening. So there's just no question that the Packers will use one of those top 2 first-round picks on a receiver.
God, you wouldn't think so, would you? Now, they haven't drafted a receiver in the first round for 20 years. 20! Wow. 2002. Javon Walker. So, I mean, anything is possible, and they do have 2 second-rounders, and their second-round draft record, or second-round track record of receivers is amazing. I mean, it's Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, all second-round picks. I mean, if you'd have gotten those guys in the first round, you'd be doing cartwheels. Yeah. So there is that, and as you know, Greg, it's a hell of a receiver draft. You can probably get some guys in the second that you really like.
That's true.
That said, man, I would be floored if they don't use a first-round pick on a receiver. Maybe they go first and second with the receiver, but it is such a huge, huge need. And Rodgers is a great quarterback. LaFleur's a great coach, but you got no prayer of winning the Super Bowl with these guys. I mean, no offense to Lazard, who's a good player, but without a difference maker, these guys just have no chance, I don't think.
Yeah, and you just said first and second because I was going to ask you that. So that wouldn't even be a surprise that with the 4 picks in the top 60, if they use 2 of those picks on a receiver.
Not to me, it wasn't. Now, I should always lump it in as they need pass catchers. So, maybe it's a second-round tight end.
There you go.
Right? Maybe that's how it goes, although they're pretty decent at tight end right now. But they just need guys who can catch footballs and run routes, and whether that's 2 receivers or a receiver and a tight end or whatever it is. Yeah, they've got to get weapons. I think Lazard's a really good player, but he's on nobody's list of number 1 receivers. Randall Cobb in his prime was never a number 1 receiver. Yeah. Robert Tunyon's a hell of a good tight end. He's coming off a torn ACL. Will he be ready for week 1? Probably not. I mean, good heavens. I mean, they need some guys who can catch some footballs, whether that's, whatever position, whatever the round, they need some guys who can do that.
Yeah, just taking a look at the depth chart here, because Mercedes Lewis, I mean, he just keeps rolling along.
So he's amazing.
Yeah.
He's going to be 38 in May.
Wow.
And he's got some value, but again, I mean, he's on no one's list of, he's not Travis Kelce. He's not going to go catch 80.
No. And DeGuara is basically, we know what DeGuara is. You don't expect a jump, do you?
No, probably not. He was coming off a torn ACL at this time last year. So, maybe there's a jump there just because he wasn't probably a real big factor week 1. But I mean, you're not talking about going to 50 catches either. He's not a tight end in the traditional tight end sense. He is put him out at slot, put him at fullback. He's that kind of player. He's just not, he can't line up in line when, like your old school guys can do. He's kind of that move around piece.
And at wide receiver, Amari Rodgers. So look, much wasn't expected from him last year. what about this year? Is he somebody? And again, we're not talking about a number one receiver and maybe even a number two, but is there when you get drafted in the third round by year two, you need to be a part of the group. So is that what they're expecting?
Yeah, for sure. Now again, Randall Cobb is back. Cobb's a slot guy. Rodgers is a slot guy. I mean, how much two slot receiver stuff are you going to run? So that you run into that. But you're right. You don't draft the guy in the third round for the sake of keeping him on the bench for 2 years. So they need to get a lot more out of him than they did last year. I mean, he was a total non-factor. Again, when they brought in Cobb before the start of training camp, so there's no expectation of him to be a factor. But yeah, you're right, Greg. He needs to be a guy who can go play 10, 15, 20 snaps a game and get him some manufactured touches, if nothing else.
Okay. The big issue, though, at wide receiver is definitely the need to add some speed. And so does that mean like a Drake London is out of the picture because he won't run his 40? And if so, or if not, which other players? I mean, I in my mock draft, I had Christian Watson as their second pick in the first round. I think he would be a perfect fit because he gives you the size, he gives you the speed. But speed is definitely the main focus at that number one spot, isn't it?
Well, that's what LaFleur said. He said that when he's asked at the spring meetings what he was looking for, and he said a guy to take the top off the defense. So that was obviously Valdez-Scantling the last few years. So they don't have that. No, I mean, Greg, they could take some guy in the fourth round, right?
True.
I mean, he could be that speed guy. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the first round.
Like that kid Austin from Memphis, somebody like that. He runs a 4.4, or even Thornton from Baylor.
Right. So I mean, that could be the guy for sure. I mean, if Chris Olave is there, I mean, you probably would do backflips, right? If he's there at 22, I mean, I think you'd be thrilled to death if he's there. But yeah, a guy who can run for sure, because that's not Lazard's forte. Lazard is the dirty work guy, and catch a receiver screen and run over somebody, and he's got that sneaky speed because he blocks so often, and that the corners are prepared for him to get blocked all the time. But it's not really his forte. So yeah, I would think someone who can stretch the field. And Watson's an intriguing guy. I talked to a couple scouts about him last week, Greg. Both of the two guys I talked to said they did not consider him a first-round pick, but they thought he would be a first-round pick because he's so big and tall, and someone's going to take a bet on those trades. Yeah. Right. I mean, so he's not ready to be that guy now, but 6'4" and 4.36 is hard to come by.
That's what I said on one of the shows yesterday. I said a guy like that, he's got to go in the first round. I mean, how often do you have players with size and speed? It just doesn't come around very often. And he produces. So, okay, let's ask about Jameson Williams then. If he's on the board, and let's say Wilson and Olave are off the board, do they seriously consider taking a receiver who may not contribute as much this season?
I think so. A, because he's really good, but B, because you have the extra first-round pick and you have the 2 second-round picks. I think you can take a flyer on a guy who might not play. And I've mentioned Ojabo, the outside linebacker from Michigan, is a guy who could be in that range too, where you've got so many draft picks, including 4 in the first or 7 in the first 4 rounds, that you could probably take an injured guy with the long view here. So yeah, I could see Williams being a play, and you hope that he's ready to go by November, December, and you can get you something out of him. So I would think that'd make a lot of sense.
Okay, offensive line. Now that is definitely a need for this team. Just getting a little younger at the one spot, even though there seems to be pretty decent. The starting 5 with Bakhtiari there looks pretty solid, but with injuries, and we've seen injuries affect the team, and Bakhtiari's age, is that definitely? Are you looking at maybe one of those 2 first-round picks at left tackle?
Not a left. I mean, Bakhtiari's under contract for a while, but at right tackle, they got rid of Billy Turner, who was just starter the last couple of years. So I could see that. Now, Elton Jenkins, the Pro Bowl left guard in 2020, he replaced Bakhtiari at left tackle last year. He was fantastic. Now, he's tore his ACL too. So I think the question is, where does the team view Jenkins in the long run? Do they view him as he's at his best at guard, we'll put him back at guard? Or do they think, he can play tackle for us, so maybe we need to go draft the guard? I would say that it's best available lineman.
Okay.
If it's, let's just say Zion Johnson's there, you take Zion Johnson and then you put Jenkins at right tackle. If Penning from Northern Iowa's there, you draft him and you put Jenkins back at guard. So I think it's it's always been that way too. You put your best 5 out there. So I think it's you draft you draft the best guy, and then you take advantage of Jenkins' unbelievable versatility and figure it out from there.
The team's satisfied with Josh Myers, second-round pick last year at center.
Yeah, he didn't play a whole lot because of a knee injury, but yeah, they really like him for sure. And Yash Nyman, an undrafted guy a few years ago from Virginia Tech, played really well at tackle. Royce Newman and John Runyon, their young guards, played pretty well. I mean, you can get better there, but you can win with those guys. So they're okay, but you're right, Greg. The depth has been hammered away. They lost Lucas Patrick in free agency, and they got rid of Billy Turner, and not sure when Jenkins is going to come back. That's three guys who played a lot.
Okay, so but makes sense. Best available guard or tackle.
Yeah,
with one of those two picks makes a lot of sense. Okay, now on defense, one of the big edge rushers is gone. Even though they didn't play a whole lot last year. Smith, of course, I'm talking about Zadarius Smith. So, does that mean that the team could definitely use another edge rusher early in the draft process?
Yeah, no question. Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary are great. The depth is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the 7th round pick Jonathan Garvin was, it's okay. They had a bunch of undrafted guys. I mean, they had guys off practice squads playing a lot of snaps. In 19, they signed Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith to a gazillion dollars worth of contracts, and they drafted Rashawn Gary at 12. So that shows you what the value of that position is. So yeah, they need to get a guy, A, so those two guys can rest, and B, if one of those guys gets hurt, you're not starting someone who shouldn't be playing. So it's a great edge draft. And all those Big Ten guys might be the right, the Purdue kid, Karlaftis. Is it Karlaftis? Karlaftis? I know how to spell it.
Yeah.
I know how to spell it. I know how to say it. I'm a writer. Ojabo, Mafe, and the Penn State guy. I'm not going to butcher his name on this recording. But those are 4 Big Ten guys. You figure probably 3 of them are there, right? So that makes sense there. I mean, 2nd round, 3rd round, there's a lot of guys who can really be instant contributors there.
So you think that if Ojabo does get drafted, that he gets taken in the 1st round because of the extra year, the 5th-year option?
I would. I mean, he's 6'4" and ran 4.5 something. He had 11 sacks and 5 forced fumbles in a hell of a good football league, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And I mean, who knows what Achilles, right? But what we saw, Cam Akers come back pretty quick. Now that's Cam Akers. It's everybody's different. Every position is different. Every injury is different. Who knows? But it does show that what's possible. And the good teams are concerned about September and October, right? They're concerned about the end of the season. They're concerned about 23 and 24 and 25. I mean, if the guy's worth a draft pick, you're gonna draft him, right?
Absolutely. It's only those GMs that's why you don't want to have a lame duck. You don't want to have someone maybe on the final year, and you don't know if he's thinking about now or the future. But that's not where the Packers are. So,
right, and Green Bay is one of 8 teams with 2 first-round picks, so you can. I don't want to say throw it away because it's not a throwaway, but you may be throwing away his rookie season, but you got another 1st-round pick.
That's right.
Right, so it's not like your 1st-round picks are going to give you nothing because you got another guy, and Green Bay's got 2 in the 2nd, 1 in the 3rd, and 2 in the 4th. So if you need an edge guy, you take Ojabo in the 1st. You think, hey, the guy might not play. Well, whatever. You go get a guy in the 4th round who could be your depth piece.
Sure. Would you consider the top 3 needs then being edge, offensive line, and wide receiver?
Yeah, for sure. If you're forward thinking, tight end, Tunyon and Lewis are free agents, and safety, Amos and Savage are free agents. Now, there's obviously you can re-sign those guys, so nothing's set in stone there. Sure. But if you're looking ahead, those make some sense too. I mean, gosh, if Daxton Hill's available, I might take a shot at that.
And as far as the depth, so again, Douglas is back. Alexander was injured last year, but he returned to the playoffs. Sullivan, does the team miss? Will the team miss Sullivan?
It's a good question. I mean, man, Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, and Eric Stokes, that is a hell of a trio. Now, who's your slot guy, right? I mean, Alexander can do that. I mean, he's so quick, and he's tough. I know he got hurt last year, whatever, but he's tough. He's fearless. So I mean, he can play your slot, but they want to kind of move him with the number 1 guy. So what if that number 1 guy is on the perimeter, but the team has a good slot guy? Now, how do you feel about your slot corner? I mean, can Stokes play that? Probably not. Douglas has no history of it. They think Savage could play in a slot, but they don't have a safety to replace him. So you could draft the guy, you could draft the slot, or you could draft a safety so Savage can go play in the slot. But I think Alexander could do it, but it's just a matter of if a team has a good slot and a good perimeter receiver, where do you put Alexander? So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see either a pure slot for depth there or a safety, so you have some flexibility with Savage.
With Campbell having such a big year last year, and now he's back, and we talked about there's good edge talent right now with the two guys, but overall depth wise, and when you talk about that second inside position, are they concerned at all about that? Is that something where maybe they'll take a stab at somebody in the middle rounds to try to see if they can eventually find a starter to pair alongside Campbell, or do they feel that guy's on the roster?
Yeah, they probably feel pretty good about Chris Barnes. Okay. Undrafted guy a couple of years ago. On a per play basis, he actually outperformed Campbell in like a lot of areas. I mean, he's really good. But he's 6'2". He's a little. There's some size limitations, athletic limitations. You're always trying to do better, right? Sure. He's one of those guys, kind of like Lucas Patrick was and Sullivan. You feel good about him, but you can try to get better there. So yeah, I wouldn't surprise me if there's a mid-round guy. You take a shot there, and if nothing else, you can improve your special teams with that draft pick. They have no depth there at all at that spot. So if something happens to one of those guys, you're in pretty bad shape. They played dime 25% of the time last year, so you're talking about a 3/4 of the time player anyway. Okay. So I think if they have to play with Barnes, they'll be fine with that. If you can improve, it's probably worth a shot.
All right. And if you had to name a player or two on the roster that fans outside of Green Bay aren't very familiar with, who you believe could be ready to take a jump maybe this year, can you give me a player or two?
Yeah, in the D-line, TJ Slayton, a fifth-round pick last year, a real big dude, but pretty athletic. He didn't play a whole lot last year, but he had some moments where you thought, well, this guy's got something. Look, this is so cliche. Every team needs their year two guys to step up. I think Slayton certainly falls in that line.
Okay.
D-line coach Jerry Montgomery talked about that the other day, actually. There's enough good plays on film where, okay, now this is the expectation. This is what we need from you. They got Kenny Clark on the line. They signed Jaron Reed. Dean Lowry's back. So if you can get Slayton to take a step forward, now you've got four guys in that D-line. You feel really, really good about that. And I mentioned Eric Stokes at cornerback a while ago. He was their first-round pick. He was really, really good. He went totally under the radar nationally. He got trashed by Justin Jefferson at Minnesota in November, and it was like his really only one bad game. I mean, maybe that's what stuck with people, or
probably
he didn't have the interceptions that allowed that, or some of the other rookies had. So maybe that's it. But if you look at, and you can take Pro Football Focus's coverage numbers for what they're worth, because there's a lot of guesswork on coverage responsibilities. Sure. But he was like sub 50% completion percentage. The guy is 6'1". He ran 4.29 or whatever he ran. He's a hell of a good football player. I don't think people really realize how good he was.
And
he played that Baltimore game at the end of the year. He gave up like 8 catches, and they're all nickel dimers.
Okay.
He tackled the guy every time, so he gave up like 8 catches. I'm totally making up the numbers here, so I don't have them in front of me. He gave like 8 catches for 30 yards. Yeah. It was like he tackled everybody. He's a good football player, and I don't think anybody really realized outside of Green Bay how good he is.
And those are the under the radar numbers that fans just sometimes they don't get. He gave up 8 passes. Yeah, but he tackled, like you said, he tackled everybody for 30 yards. That means something. So
right. Yeah, he's a really good player.
And if you had to, we just talked about some of what we feel are obvious needs for the team in the first round, but give me a potential either player or position that would be the surprise pick in the first round.
Yeah, safety. I kind of mentioned earlier, if you think Savage is your next best nickel slot guy, whatever you want to call it, someone's got to play safety. They don't have anybody. Their number 3 safety last year was Henry Black. They didn't even tender him as an exclusive rights guy. So they have no depth there at all. Those guys are going to be free agents. You might want to move Savage. So Daxton Hill or Lewis Sign from Georgia.
Okay.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And by the way, Mason Crosby didn't have his best season. They're not. Are they going to look for someone eventually? This may not be the offseason, or are we getting to that point that they might start looking for someone?
Well, they got 3 kickers on their roster right now. They're probably they got 3. They got Dominic Eberle from Utah State. He was with new special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia with the Raiders, and J.J. Molson from UCLA. He made a 60-yarder at training camp last year. So they've got 3. I'm guessing those young guys will battle it out during OTAs, and they'll cut it down to 2, and it'll be Mason Crosby against one of those young guys in training camp.
Yeah, and those are always hard because Crosby's been around it for so long. He's a veteran, and to make that switch, that's the difficult part because you never know. Sometimes then Crosby will go somewhere else and kick for another 5 years with a 90% clip. So it's a very scary. Yeah. And then your rookie kicker can't handle it in the first week of the season. It's just very hard.
It is. He had a bad year last year. GM Brian Gutekunst chalked it up to the special teams being bad in general, and it all just kind of snowballed. And I can see that. I mean,
that's true.
They changed the holder for week 1 when they brought in a new punter. They changed the long snapper at midseason. The protection issues are. I mean, he made the game winner at San Fran in week 3, and it was almost blocked. And then the playoff game against San Fran, he got one blocked, and it was just kind of this ongoing thing. And I'm thinking, as mentally tough as all these guys are, and they're all mentally tougher than I am, if you're Mason Crosby, aren't you going up there thinking, God, what in the hell is going to go wrong this time? And I just think it weighed out him. So I wouldn't. I know most of Green Bay is ready to get rid of the guy. I wouldn't be quite so fast. And it takes a special kind of kicker to kick here in December and January, just like it does in Chicago and all these cold weather cities. You have no idea if Joe Rookie or J.J. Molson is going to be able to hack it when it's 5 degrees and wind chill's -20. Yeah. It's a whole different football game.
I remember when the Bills, the kid who's kicking for them now, and so they drafted him, and he was playing the Jets, so my team, and he was awful in week 1, and you had to figure, did they make the right move? He can't handle it. All right, it was just a blip. He got over it, but a lot of kickers don't. A lot of kickers have that first week. It just goes downhill. They never recover. And then you've let Mason Crosby go sign somewhere else. And then all of a sudden you're looking, it takes you 6-7 more years to find a guy. You never know.
Yeah. Gosh, there are teams have been looking for kickers for years. I mean, the Bears have one now, I think. But after they got rid of Robbie Gould, it was just
this
nomadic search for a kicker. And you're sitting there in Chicago and if you can't hack it, so. And it is such a mental game there too. It's like if you're a left tackle, you give up a sack. Well, you're playing. You got another snap 30 seconds later. If you're the kicker, you might not play for 20 minutes. Yeah. So it is a total mental.
That's right.
Mental job for those specialists.
And that was a good example, Gould, because he goes he goes to San Francisco and just he becomes one of the best kickers in the league for a few years. So you just don't know. Before I let you go, Bill. Free agency, any other opportunities do you think out there? You hearing anything about, and usually at this point, everyone's going to wait now until after the draft to see what holes need to be filled. Do the Packers have enough money? Can you see them adding another veteran? And if so, what position or what player do you think they might be looking at?
Yeah, you're probably right, Greg. It's let's see what we draft, and then we'll kind of go revisit it.
They have the money, though.
They don't have much money now.
Okay.
At some point, you probably have to extend Jair Alexander. He's under the 5th-year tenure of $13 million. He's going to cost a lot more than that on a per-year basis, but that year 1 cap number would be significantly less. So I think that's the next thing is you extend Jair Alexander and you create some cap space that way. If you draft a defensive lineman, maybe you cut Dean Lowry.
Okay.
That gets you some cap space to go sign somebody. But I think they're probably pretty set right now where you think, maybe you bring back right tackle Dennis Kelly if you don't draft anybody. He was pretty decent last year, and he's available. So, But you're right, Greg. I think I was surprised they signed Sammy Watkins the other day, to be honest with you. I mean, for that same reason. But I think they're probably done until after the draft.
Yeah, and we all know that doesn't mean anything regarding the Packers' need to go out and get some more receivers. So That's just a veteran. That's all that is. No smokescreen there. Okay, so for Packers fans, again, they can go to Sports Illustrated on the website, si.com. Is it PackersCentral.com?
That's it. Yep, PackersCentral.com.
Easy. And what are you're just going to have smorgasbord of draft coverage, right?
Yeah, I'm doing position previews with, scouting reports and, all the usual mishmash. Plus, I like the life stories kind of things. So you get a little personal view. So that's how I've done the draft like that for years and years and years. It's, here's your scouting stuff, but here's a little off the field information for you just for fun.
And I like it when the draft is over because then you know which players you have, and then you can really go into those types of stories even further. But that's what I like. I like
the personal touch. Yeah. I mean, everybody knows the other stuff. I mean, go to our lads for the scouting information, but it's it's the whole package. It's fun.
That's what drives us, right? So it keeps us excited about the sport, and it's what's great because every year it's different players, so it always changes.
Yep, everyone's got a story.
That's right. Bill, appreciate it. We look forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to talk to you between post-draft and before the season begins. And again, thanks for taking your time to talk to us today.
Take care, Greg. Have a good one, everybody.